Hey, everybody. Welcome to Grilling at the Green. I'm JT, big part of Golf News Network, among other ancillary broadcast platforms and radio stations. Really honored today to welcome back to the show Frank Nobilo. Frank has taken time out of his busy schedule. May not be busy right at this moment, but it's gearing up, trust me. And we want to thank him for being here today. Frank, it's nice to see you again. And first of all, I had to say, didn't your daughter just land a new gig?
She did. Yeah, that's a good way to start. Happy New Year, first of all, Jeff.
Thanks.
She did. She left CNN a few years ago, and she actually got a board position on an AI company.
Hmm.
It was called is called IFS, and she had a contract for 3 years. Just didn't quite like the way it was working out. She was a spokesman for them, board position. Met a lot of people from MIT, and for some reason, she just wanted to go back into the previous space in a little different way. And she's good friends with Piers Morgan. So
Hmm.
Piers had started his YouTube channel, which is called Uncensored. Bianca's more of an academic. That's my daughter's name, and she wanted to do history and sort of stroke politics. So that started up officially probably just over a month ago. Yeah, and she's slowly building an audience, but she's very good. I mean, she's a voracious reader. One of the best history schools in England is Warwick. So that's where she attended. Some of their field trips were great. They'd go to Italy or Greece and learn
Sure.
about, and that never left her really. But yeah, so I'm proud of her.
Well, good for her and good for you. I saw that clip a while back and I went, I'm gonna have to ask Frank about that. So
Mm.
anyway, a couple of things to get us started here. You're heading into the new season, and I think a lot of listeners, i.e., viewers, how do you prep? I mean, you're just a wealth of knowledge, obviously, from all your experiences and all that, but
Some
there's got
people
to
say
be
BS.
but there's got to be prep. I mean, I prep just doing this show. So you're on national television, international television. There's got to be some prep time that goes into that.
Yeah, sadly, you're right. Otherwise, we get yelled at more than normal. But golf never stops.
Right.
So the hardest thing is when you shut it down. I do try and watch other sports in the off season because I think you learn as a broadcaster from other sports. Just because we're in the golf space doesn't mean that you can't improve your technique, so to speak. And so you watch NFL, see the way they keep their energy up, or you might watch basketball, hockey, or watch rugby where I grew up. All sorts of different types of announcers. So that's more the technical side on maybe what you can do a little differently as a broadcaster. And then you try and obviously keep up to date with what's going on, whether it's equipment, whether it's instruction. Obviously, the players are moving around like musical chairs between Live and the PGA Tour, so that's another thing. But for example, yesterday I was lucky enough to be a fly on the wall at the AMG Golf Summit, and AMG it's more geared around gears, which is computerized software, 3D
Hmm.
format, which is phenomenal. So a lot of things have changed since I last played competitively. It was just sort of pre-TrackMan getting into it. And then each year, I mean, if you're a techie, there's so many great things in golf. So I have a lot of respect for the instructors. Sometimes they don't have a big enough voice in the game. So yesterday, I got there at 8:30 in the morning and left at 6:30 in the afternoon. So I was just a sponge. There was Brian Manzella, who used to coach David Toms, was there. I don't want to go through all the coaches, but there was
Sure.
so many good people. Sean Webb from AMG, he was nice enough to give me a spot there, and so I realized I was taking up somebody else's spot. But just to be a sponge and learn, these people watch swing after swing after swing. Some of their verbiage might be a little different, but they're also the conduit to the people that play every day. We televise the sport. They deal with it on a day-to-day basis. So I have a lot of respect and I learn a lot from them. So that was a little bit of my homework yesterday.
It seems like you said it's just a constant flow of new gear, new tech stuff, new techniques. There always seems to be a new coach that comes out and says, "Hey, I've got the answer," which I think I'm old enough to say nobody actually has the answer, but that's why we play the game too.
Yeah, well, just to interrupt on there, that was one thing I learned yesterday. Perspective, for example, like a coach will say, to your point, this is the secret. And then what they've found, and it's not like the coach is wrong,
Hmm.
it's the camera angle or whatever they looked at, the various pupil. From their lens today, that was the theory. It's a bit like when the earth was flat. And then no, and the more
Yeah.
information you get doesn't mean that they're crazy, but with all the information they had right there and then, the earth was flat. And then the more information you get, the more worldly you become, the more knowledge, and you become more and more educated. So the instruction of yesterday that might have said, for example, one of the topics yesterday was you shallow the club. And I watched swing after swing yesterday, and it's a different muscle group. Players do not do that. It's just where the camera is or the angle. It gives the
Hmm.
appearance that that's what they're doing. So therefore, everybody watching therefore tries to copy it, and you go down a rabbit hole. So you've got a lot of smart minds that are trying to bridge that and stop the average amateur from sucking that information in, and for example, wrecking their game.
Well, you touched on a point there for me in the golf magazines. For years, you would see a very well-respected coach come out and say, "This is how you hit that sand shot," just
Hmm.
as an example, right? And then you would go to 15 pages back, and there was another coach that says, "No, you hit it this way." And I think and they both have valid points for, like you say, what they're seeing at the time, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
But I think the average muck like me who's out there just trying to, break 90, if you will, that gets a little confusing sometimes.
It does. I was on the phone this morning with one of my best friends, and he's an Australian. He's in the hotel business in Charlotte, runs the Omni there. And he just got a new Mevo, and he has his thing set up in his garage where he hits some balls. And we just got into a discussion about, TrackMan. And it's not a brand thing. The Mevo
Yeah.
is not $25,000. So for him, it was like, do I go ball speed? Do I go, club head speed? Do I go loft? And all these things, to your point, where they read one article about, the gaps between your clubs should be 4 degrees. Then another article says, well, it should be 10 yards or 15 yards. So, and like, is that contradictory, or is that still saying the same thing? And then what the pros are doing now is they gap with ball speed. So they find the ball speed with it, which sounds a little foreign to the average amateur, and it also sounds more complicated. So on one hand, you have truth, but you got to simplify that for the guy at home. So, he's a four handicapper. He's a very good player. He loves his golf. But to me, that's also like a conduit to the people that are watching the golf. So as broadcasters, I think we've got to be, in some respects, even more accurate. Or if it's too complicated, then don't talk about it.
Yeah. How much prep time do you do once, like you said, you're leaving this week, I believe, or very soon?
Next week. Next week.
Next week. Okay. To go to your first broadcast. Walk us through fairly quickly, if you could, Frank. Once you get there and everybody says hello because you haven't seen them for a while, it's the first broadcast of the year, technically. What's your day like before you go on the air?
Yeah, that's a good question. Up until this year, I did a lot of Thursday, Fridays for Golf Channel before I went on to CBS.
Hmm.
So if I used my previous years, for example, I would get on nearly, at least a full day before. So in those days, it was Wednesday. And you go on the range a little bit, but you also go around the golf course. I look at it through a player's eyes, but I'm not trying to play the golf course through my ability or my eyes. I'm trying to say, well, for example, Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler, the two of the best players in the world, they play the game differently. So a shot for Rory might be easier than a shot for Scotty, and vice versa. And you can go through that for the rest of the field. I used to use the analogy of the two Johnsons, Dustin and Zach. You couldn't play the game any more differently. So
Hmm.
if they had 260 yards across water, for Dustin Johnson was no big deal because he had immense power. For Zach Johnson, in those days, he was probably on the limit of the 3 wood across water. So it was a much tougher shot. So you have to try and look at a hole in a lot of different ways. And of course, golf, we change the hole location every day. We have different weather. It might be into one day, a cross breeze, and whatever. So you learn the course naturally and you try and pick up. I remember, for example, Pebble Beach last year. I did Thursday, Friday, as well as Saturday, Sunday. I was having breakfast with my wife on property, and Roy's agent and one of his best friends who's also helps him is a guy called Niall O'Connor, and Sean O'Flaherty was the agent, and they just joined us for a quick bit. we didn't really want to chat about golf. But then just as we were leaving, I said, "Hey, any changes?" And Niall says, "Yeah, Rory's trying a new ball." Now, I'm not allowed to say it on regular broadcast, but it
Sure.
was tailor made. There's a lot of different. You can find that out in 2 seconds on the internet. And I just said, "Which one? Does it spin a little more? Because that ball has 5 covers. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here." And
Sure,
he goes,
sure.
"Yeah, a little softer, spins more." And it was a Pebble Beach. And so instantly you start thinking, so is it going to help his short irons, which is sometimes a weakness? It opens up Pandora's box on what it might do. Will he lose yardage with the driver because of the 5 cores? Maybe not. And it sends you down this road, which to me is extremely exciting because it's new for him, so it's worth watching, and it's also worth telling the viewer. So you tell the people you're working with, whether it's Dottie, Colt, Trevor, Jim, or whatever, and everybody's sort of absorbing information like like an octopus. You got tentacles going everywhere. Amanda, the same. She will talk to the players from a different point of view, maybe run into a coach. So you're trying to gather that information. We're trying to share it, not steal it. And like I said, Golf Channel days. Then I would get into the Thursday broadcast. Same thing in the morning. Look at the golf course, the hole locations, see where they are. Maybe what's hard, what's easier. You look at things like shot length. There's a lot of tools. And then I always remember something from Billy Packer. I met Billy Packer years ago, and like a young broadcaster, I picked his brains up. I didn't want to be rude, but I'm
Yeah.
like, there he is. This great basketball announcer, and I'm like, if you don't mind me asking, how did you prepare? And he goes, it's quite simple, really. I look at why Team A should win. Middle basketball's an east to west game, not like golf. I look at why the Lakers should win or lose, and I look at why the Celtics should win or lose. And I'm
Hmm.
like, well, that's not really, in my mind, I'm thinking that's not really riveting. But the last thing what he said, I'll never forget. He says, then I put it to the side and I watched the ball. So in other words, he's made an argument for the Lakers and against the Lakers. He's made an argument for Celtics, for them and against them. So he's done his homework. But then the most important thing for the people at home is what are the players doing with the ball? So I look at that as an analogy for trying to get ready for a golf tournament. You try and see why this golf course should suit a certain player, or maybe where he'll come unstuck. Same, you go down the field. I remember Jason Day, for example, at the Players Championship. I was on a live from in those days, and Brandel and I we were going through the players really that we thought the really good players that we didn't think could win, and Jason was one of them because Jason in that particular time, even though he's one of the best players in the world, his sort of short irons, middle irons were barely top 100. But then you make an argument on why he could win. And the only way we could figure out that he would do that is he had to hit from a closer distance. In other words, even with a 6-iron in his hand and another player with a 6-iron in his hand, he's going to lose. But if
Yeah.
he's hitting an 8-iron with somebody else hitting a 6-iron, it's game on. And so I'm sort of really proud of that segment where you make the argument for and against the player. And then lo and behold, Jason Day did win that week. And he won it actually by being far more aggressive off the tee and going with shorter clubs. It doesn't always work out that way, but you've got to go in with knowing your homework, but with a complete open mind. And then, to quote Billy Packer, you just watch the ball. You hang in. It's a
Sure.
team. As Vin Scully once said, golf is it's a relay sport. When you're an announcer, it's a team sport. So you're just trying to hand the baton off and give people a wide berth and allow them to do the best job possible as well.
Well, and then you have to be prepared for whatever Colt is going to throw at you out there on the course.
Yeah, he can be a little annoying. No, he's good. I mean, we've got
I know.
along with Jason Wagner. I was talking about the Thursday, Friday with the Golf Channel. I mean, CBS has been a tremendous employer to me because once the tournament started, we've condensed the field. So Saturday, Sunday, you feel like you've got everybody ramped up and you got the business end of the tournament. So you're seeing some of the best shots. You have all the best technology, camera angles and all that. Steve Milton, the director, is just an absolute genius. The drones, I remember doing Augusta, remember the November Masters where there was no patrons. So we were allowed to put drones. Course never looked better. I mean, you saw things you never ever seen before.
Hmm.
And also you've got to have people that throw curveballs, i.e. Colt. I think CBS has done a tremendous job of trying to garner young talent. Colts 40, Johnson Wagner, the new addition now 45. Obviously, Amanda isn't very old as well. And then you've got the grey heads, which is, Jim and myself, and of course Trevor underneath that, and his brother Mark. So we feel like we have a good ensemble. I think we also have the best producer in the game and in golf right now, which is Sellers Shice. So, matter of fact, we have a Zoom call this afternoon. So nobody takes anything for granted,
Yeah.
and we're not there to be the star of the show. We're trying to, we hold ourselves to a standard to do the best show we can, and for the viewer at home, and we try and have some fun in the process. So whether that's Colt having a jibe, because for example, this afternoon Colt's playing golf. He's very close to some of the players. He stays current with the game from his own golf point of view, and so you've got just a nice blend of everything.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. We want to thank the folks at Birdie Ball for sponsoring part of this show. If you need a little practice putting green, that if you live in the part of the world like I do, where the weather is not always cooperative, go to birdieball.com and check out their greens. Excuse me. Frank and I will be back in just a minute. Don't go away. Welcome back to Grilling at the Green. I'm JT. We're blessed to have Frank Nobilo with us today. Frank, I wanted to, there's been, let me finish that sentence. I wanted to throw something at you. A lot in the news now. We've got Brooks coming back to the tour, a lot of hubbub about that. Some of the guys over on Live are saying, like, we're good. They're going to get their X millions and move forward. From in the booth, how does that look? Is he now just another golfer on tour when he's actually in the field, or uh, is it going to be something that's going to have to be addressed? Maybe not every day, but there's going to be comments about it, obviously, in the chat, as they say.
A bit of both, to be honest. It's going to be interesting. My first week is Torrey Pines. That'll be his first week back. And then the following week, he's going to play in Phoenix. And we know what Phoenix is like.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got, especially on a Saturday, if he's playing well, it'll be interesting to see the reaction. So that's one of those things, as the same with Billy Packer. You just follow the ball because you've got to garner where the fans are, hey, this is phenomenal. We got him back. We love it. Or they're giving him a grilling. Promo for your show, really.
Thank you.
But I remember Brooks, his caddy, Ricky Elliott. He used to be here, one of the assistant professionals at Lake Nona. So I've known Ricky for years, and that's really how I got to meet Brooks. I remember when he got to world number one, I was in Korea doing the CJ Cup, and he came back in 29 in 2018. I think my memory serves me correct, to actually become the number one player in the world. Now, he was number one for nearly a year. I think it's 45, 47 weeks. So, you've got a guy of that ilk. He's also translated that ability into 5 major championships. So, actually, the following year in Korea is where he re-injured his knee. So, I think part of his departure and going over to Live was the knee. He didn't think he could put it through the same type of stress that playing around the world and the PGA Tour demands out of its players to be, there's no question it's tougher from top to bottom than anywhere else in the world. So I think playing at Live, it gave his knee a chance to heal, and by all accounts, it's not bad. So for me, I like Brooks's game, but he's also part villain. And one of the things that Liv did, it took away some of the villains. And if you use wrestling as an example, you need goodies and you need baddies. So we lost a few of the so-called villains, whether it be Sergio Garcia. Remember the days when he wanted to take on Tiger Woods? That's what made it so compelling. You had the yin and the yang in the game. Patrick Reed, phenomenal player, but he'd rub a few people up the wrong way. You also left, and Brooks can be incredibly candid. We've missed that. Matter of fact, Rory McIlroy on the PGA Tour side has sort of become the goodie and the villain at the same time, which is a bit weird. So you need people that they go, okay, he's a villain and he's a hero. So it'll be good for Brooks to come back and if he can sort of adopt that role again. But just from watching him play, 5 majors, only Mickelson has won more in the Tiger Woods era. So he's just a great player, whichever way you look at it. And he has the ability on tough courses to do what he's done already 5 times, beat the best. His major record's incredible. So I'm looking forward to having him back in the fray. It's going to strengthen the fields. It does give us something else to talk about, and it makes the PGA Tour stronger.
You mentioned Rory. I've said a couple times on the show, I actually kind of feel bad for him, not for his career and all that, but kind of the way I always thought the tour kind of didn't do him any favors. He was out there an adamant spokesman for the tour staying the
Mm.
same, and then they did some things, and we don't need to relitigate all that. But I kind of felt like they just kind of went, yeah, okay. And I think he personally, from what I can see, and I watch his news conferences, his pressers and stuff, I don't blame him for sometimes having a little chip on his shoulder. That's just me personally. I'd probably be more vocal than he is at times.
That's a good evaluation, I think, Jeff, for a number of reasons. Going back, some of the people that fans thought were villains, as we are just saying before, they
Hmm.
left. So Rory became the spokesman. Scotty Scheffler, phenomenal player. He has that ability. He's a bit like Byron Nelson, and I never, I only got to know him with a handshake, and that was
Sure.
about it. But Byron just played golf, and that's why his nickname was Lord Byron, and he was damn good at it. And then all he wanted to do was earn enough money for his farm, and he kept the game in high regard, and that was it. Nothing more than that.
Yeah.
Nothing less, but nothing more. And I think Scotty's along the same way. Scotty is he's the most normal superstar I've ever seen. And there's nothing fake about it. His relationship with his longtime instructor, Randy Smith's tremendous. I've talked about it ad nauseum, but when Scotty went through a growth spurt for about 12 months, and a lot of people would have left their instructor because they're not playing very good. He had a little bit of dip when he was a teenager. And Randy says, "You're fine. You've just grown like a foot in a year. What do you expect? You're further away from the ball, putting. Everything's going to be different. We don't have to change. Just grow into it." And it's the same when, last year when he hurt his hand trying to make pasta at home on the wine glass. I mean, that was a severe injury. And he very rarely did he talk about it. Started off and he started getting a little bit of criticism because he wasn't playing as well. If you go back and look at the first 6 weeks prior to Augusta, I mean, you never really saw the Scotty Scheffler that we'd seen the previous few years. But
Right.
there was zero panic in the team. He didn't go there. He didn't grab a microphone and say I'm injured or whatever. He just said I'm just struggling, whatever. And Randy, when I saw Randy at the side, we know what we've got to do, patience and all that. So that's the number one player in the world, and he's going through. But there's a void, especially on the PGA Tour side, because you've got this fight between the Tour and Live, and someone has to fill the void, and that's been filled by Rory because the great resume plus winning, the Grand Slam. It's huge. Plus being, the greatest European player ever. I mean, you can just tick a lot of boxes. So he's like the game needs a voice. Tiger
Yeah.
Woods, we weren't seeing him. Jack Nicklaus, when he comes out to his tournament, we've lost Arnold Palmer. So really, our side needed a voice. So Rory was the goodie and the baddie all at once. And that's where the chip came. But the good thing about it, which I'm proud of, is he didn't back down. And
Yeah.
his people were going to take shots at him. But on one hand, he's made a lot of money out of the game. On the other hand, he says, I got an opinion and I don't really care what people say. So I'm going to say it. I kind of admire that.
Yeah, I do too, because it's nice. It's refreshing as much as I was a Tiger Woods fan and still am. I mean, unabashedly. But I never saw anybody except maybe somebody that worked in Congress that could talk for 5 minutes and not say anything at times. And Tiger could do that. He was very skilled. I think he was trained from early
Yep.
on. That is a skill. I'm not taking anything away from him. But Rory just kind of comes out and goes, "Yeah, well, I thought that sucked," and then he
Mm.
will tell you why. He doesn't just make kind of a very definitive statement and move on. He'll give you some reasoning behind it. And whether you agree with it or not, I find that very refreshing myself. So that,
Yeah, that's his background. His dad, Jerry and Rose, they brought him up that way. You have a spine. I'd like to go back to the Tiger Woods thing too. There was always Tiger got criticism in a different way,
sure.
and he's one of those rare athletes that are just born to win. and they refused to quit. So Tiger would give us, from during the daylight hours, he would give us a highlight reel every day. So it was like, I don't, the rest is my time. And so, yeah, he would shut it down. And you're right. I think a politician or congressman is a great way to describe it. But he was very aware that he was always going to be quoted.
Hmm.
And, you can say, you're in the industry, you can talk for an hour. Someone can clip something out for 15 seconds and they can make you appear anyway. And
Right.
and in fairness to him, whether he played good, bad, or indifferent, and most of the time it was good, he very rarely, I mean, you probably count him on one hand where he did not do an interview. And that was the standard, which I don't think we gave him enough credit for to this very day. He would take it on the chin, he doubled the last, they stick a microphone in front of his mouth, and he would talk. So he knew that if he said something inflammatory, he was just going to get written up and killed. And all he was worried about was preparing for the very next day.
Right.
So I love sports, and even motor racing, for example. I'm a big fan of Formula One. I look at like a Max Verstappen, who's just a rare talent like Tiger Woods, and they just know that people are trying to chip into their psyches. Novak Djokovic is another one,
Hmm.
and so they have to have a steel trap mind. That's part of their greatness.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, like I said, I think Tiger, through his father, through time, through the probably the folks at Nike too.
Yeah.
They're not far from my house, trust me, and they pretty much controlled the message. So yeah, and he was under a 24/7 spotlight. Anyway, Frank and I are going to take another break. We're going to go get some cold drinks or whatever, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back to Grilling at the Green. I'm JT. Today, I'm very fortunate to have Frank Nobilo from CBS with us today, and sometimes part-time for Golf Channel. Once in a while, you fill in on the Thursday, Fridays type thing. Um, and you always do a great job. I wanted to compliment you on that. I've always, when you first agreed to do the show, 2 or 3 years ago, I was so excited to meet you, um, just because I like the quality of your work. And when you're gray hairs, you can't see it, but I do have hair under this hat, and most of it's gray anymore. But I'm always appreciative of people in our industry that work at the top and have the quality of content like Frank does. So we got a few minutes here before we wrap up the regular show, Frank. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and you touched on it in the last segment, golf media. And I was thinking about this today, getting ready. If you look back at like when Jack and Arnie um, were in their heydays, and then you had some interim, and then Tiger came along. Um, do you think Jack and Arnie's stories would be, how do I want to say, quantified? Maybe that's not the right word, meaning that there was kind of a gentleman's agreement back in those days with the old sports writers and stuff. Nobody really went after him too hard, and that they had a lot of respect for him. They probably had drinks with him after the round. Not so much in the Tiger Woods era and going forward, because we have the internet. And like you said in the last segment, everybody wants to take a little chip out of you. There's always the instantaneous gratificational headlines. Tiger said this, or Brooks said this, or Onikus did this, or whatever. I think there's a real difference in those worlds, but I just maybe thought you might give us your take on that.
I love where you're going there. I would use two words, and they're vastly different. I would say, or phrases actually. Lack of respect and the desire for more money is what's changed considerably
Hmm.
across the board. I think where I say lack of respect, if you go back to Arnold Palmer, just to use him for an example, because he was a great statesman for the game, he respected the journalism. Bob Drum, for example, was his right hand man, who was a journalist. But
Right.
if Arnold crossed the line, maybe with another rider, Bob Drum would come to him and go, "Hey, Arnold, we got to chat." He said, "You blew off so and so, or whatever they're on a deadline for for whatever article, whatever magazine.
Sure.
And he would tell them, like, because everybody has a job to do, right? Like you go to the supermarket, it doesn't hurt to say thank you or please,
Right.
or
Right.
and I think there was a respect for the industry. It's gone in politics as well. I know you can argue that whether it's media is leaning too left or whatever, but journalism was a trade. The same way, whether you make automobiles, you want to be the best you can. So you respected people that got out of bed and did a job. And I think now there's less respect for other people's industries. It's more like me, me, me. Hey, what about me? My voice is more important than yours, which I think is absolutely garbage. Everybody should have a voice, and like I said, they're just going to earn different amounts of money. So the desire to earn money means in today's world, whether it's Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, even a print, it's a race to be first. In
Yeah.
other words, if I can beat you to the punch, I can make more money than you as a scribe. Um, and that to me is not really good motivation. And you see it on the players' side too, because the war between the PJ Tour and that is literally about making more money. It used to be when you were a kid, you wanted to play golf and you wanted to compete, you wanted to be as good as you can. You had a dream of winning the Masters or the Open, whatever it was. The dream came first. I promise you now, some of the younger kids, no matter what the sport is, they want to be rich. That
Just
used to be
look at
this. That used to be the secondary goal.
Yeah, just look at the NIL in college football, for
Yeah.
example. I mean, that's just crazy to me. But I got gray hair like you do, Frank, so I can say that. But I think you're right because it's all about the clicks, the downloads. They get paid per one, so to speak. And I have a problem too with the quality of reporting. I have a real problem with the quality of
Yeah.
writing.
That's fair.
The writing is horrific sometimes. And no, ChatGPT is not going to make a good article for you. That's my thought. But anyway, I'm old, so there you go.
No, no, no. But I'm not trying to defend greyheads like yourself and myself. But to me, when I was a kid, you learn from all ages. One of the things that I still love about this game is that you don't have to be 20 or between 20 and 30 to be like a golfer. When you're a teenager or a kid, you play with adults.
Yeah,
And then you play with older people, younger people, whatever. I mean, the game is so diverse. That's one of the beauties of it. Just about every other sport, you fit into a little window. Like that's the time when you can be vaguely good. So we allow people to play golf on a multitude of levels.
sure.
So we of all people should be more tolerant than any other sport and any other industry.
Yep, I agree. Frank, you can stick around for after hours when we're done with this, just for a few minutes. We'll do that.
Sure.
I got some good ones for you.
Okay.
But Frank Nobilo, good luck next week at
I'm going
Torrey
to need it.
Pines. Yeah, no, but you're going to have some great weather, I'm sure. So down there. But thank you again. We'll be back next week with another edition of Grilling at the Green. Dave Bisbee is going to join us next week. And so until then, go out, play some golf, have some fun, and be kind. Take care, everybody.